On Saturday, several people with Musk's Department of Government Efficiency showed up here at the USAID's headquarters demanding access to the building.
In the wake of explosive revelations, new evidence has emerged linking USAID to a series of controversial actions that shocked the nation.
USAID, run by radical lunatics, and we're getting them out.
Following President Trump's radical policy shifts and unprecedented arrest orders, allegations of financial corruption, political manipulation, and hazardous funding for questionable research surfaced. Critics and whistleblowers now demand accountability, as American taxpayers question billions misdirected abroad, while essential domestic needs are ignored. Debates intensify over whether reform or dissolution of USAID can restore faith in government spending completely. Shocking arrests and radical policy shifts. On that pivotal Saturday, a group of determined individuals, some allegedly affiliated with figures like Elon Musk and proponents of government efficiency, assembled outside the USA's headquarters. They demanded immediate access to the building in a climate of uncertainty following President Trump's inauguration. This public gathering set the stage for a series of dramatic actions. In a move that stunned both the nation and the international community, President Trump ordered the immediate arrest of all USAID members and suspended the agency for 90 days. This unprecedented action was presented as a necessary response to mounting evidence implicating the agency in widespread corruption and mismanagement. The context of these arrests is crucial to understanding the broader political landscape. With Trump's administration taking aim at what it perceived as wasteful spending overseas, the drastic order to detain USAID personnel signified a break from decades of conventional foreign policy. This wasn't simply about enforcing a law. It was a symbolic purge aimed at addressing ingrained inefficiencies and alleged malfeasance. Accounts from that day describe a scene of chaos and disbelief. Protesters and bystanders witnessed federal agents execute arrest orders as part of a sweeping campaign designed to overhaul the way American foreign aid was managed. Critics argued that the decision to arrest USAID members was politically motivated, intended both to target entrenched bureaucratic practices and to realign government priorities towards an America First agenda. Supporters of Trump's measure maintained that billions of dollars, allocated under the guise of humanitarian assistance, had instead been diverted into the pockets of corrupt officials and powerful elites. Such allegations fueled an already volatile debate. Lawmakers, activists, and everyday citizens began questioning, was this truly a bid to reform an outmoded system? Or was it an opportunistic move to reshape foreign policy for domestic political gain? Furthermore, this bold action came amidst a series of other dramatic policy shifts, including strict new immigration laws and executive orders targeting the Gulf of Mexico. Each measure contributed to reconfiguring the government's narrative on spending, national security, and global strategy. The arrest warrants and subsequent suspension of USAID were thus not isolated events. They were interwoven with a broader governmental effort to recalibrate U.S. involvement overseas and to hold government agencies to a new standard of fiscal responsibility. As investigations unfolded in the days that followed, questions about transparency and accountability deepened, reinforcing the view that dramatic reform was imminent, even if the path forward remained uncertain. Financial mismanagement and disappearing billions. At the core of the controversy swirling around USAID lies an extraordinary tale of financial mismanagement and misappropriation. Investigations revealed that billions of dollars earmarked for international aid, designed to build schools, hospitals, clean water systems, and support disaster relief, had mysteriously vanished. Government inspectors discovered that funds meant to assist vulnerable populations in impoverished nations were often rerouted into private accounts and used to enrich influential insiders, leaving behind a trail of broken promises and unfinished projects. Detailed audits and whistleblower testimonies painted a damning picture. Money originally allocated for biodiversity conservation in African countries, along with disaster relief funds, reportedly disappeared without a trace. In one case, the agencies responsible for disaster recovery and infrastructure development were found to be billing exorbitant fees, a practice that inflated overall costs while significantly diminishing the actual resources available for those in dire need. Investigators noted that the absence of modern tracking mechanisms was a critical factor. Traditional methods of fund management had allowed corruption to flourish unchecked over decades, with millions of dollars being siphoned from public coffers for private gain. Experts stressed that the failure to modernize financial oversight was a systemic flaw that undermined USAID's ability to deliver on its humanitarian mission. In an era when digital technologies like blockchain and biometric verification could offer robust safeguards, USAID's reliance on outdated systems resulted in a convoluted web of transactions where accountability was nearly impossible to trace. The implications of these financial improprieties were not limited to the loss of funds alone. They also meant that entire communities around the world were left without the promised benefits, further entrenching poverty and instability. Cases emerged where funds intended for rebuilding war-torn regions had been diverted to finance military capabilities or other politically motivated agendas. Reports suggested that political meddling was intertwined with blatant corruption. Campaigns to support favorable regimes or bolster allies often overshadowed the primary mission of aiding those in need. This introduced a layer of political complexity that not only marred the efficacy of USAID's projects, but also called into question the integrity of aid distribution on a global scale. Political manipulation and media influence. Beyond the glaring issues of financial mismanagement, a darker narrative of political manipulation and media bias has emerged, casting long shadows over USAID's ostensibly humanitarian mission. Investigations have uncovered substantial evidence that funds, originally intended for disaster relief and infrastructure development, were covertly redirected to influence political outcomes in recipient nations. Rather than serving to build robust civil societies, these funds frequently became the instruments of power politics, supporting regimes and political groups whose allegiances aligned with U.S. geopolitical interests. In various regions, from Eastern Europe to Africa, a pattern became evident. Aid money was allocated not solely to improve poor living conditions, but also to bolster political factions that would, in turn, serve larger strategic purposes. In some instances, funds intended for post-war reconstruction were redirected to military expenses, or even used to train political operatives. For example, in Ukraine and Georgia, USAID's involvement coincided with significant political shifts that later contributed to regional conflicts. Such actions not only undermined the development objectives of aid programs, but also stoked existing tensions and fostered instability, complicating the geopolitical landscape. Parallel to these developments was the equally insidious influence of the media. Major news outlets, critics claim, received financial support or incentives from USAID-linked entities, effectively blurring the lines between independent journalism and state-sponsored messaging. Reports lauding USAID's successes often obscured the agency's underlying failures and the misappropriation of funds. Journalists and media analysts found themselves entangled in a system where critical reporting risked losing funding, thus engendering a self-perpetuating cycle of favorable coverage. The result was a distorted public perception in which USAID's contributions appeared overwhelmingly positive, concealing the substantial shortcomings that plagued its operations. This symbiotic relationship between USAID and media networks contributed significantly to shaping the narrative both domestically and internationally. When influential outlets reproduced what appeared to be objective assessments of USAID's work, the true extent of corruption and operational ineptitude was conveniently downplayed. Such practices raised serious questions about the independence of press coverage, as well as the ethics of government-funded media that effectively became cheerleaders for the very programs under scrutiny. As dissenting voices emerged, the media's role in either amplifying or stifling these criticisms came under intense examination. Political elites, too, were not immune from scrutiny. Many critics argued that USAID was used as a tool to serve hidden political agendas. Rather than fostering genuine democratic development, its funding mechanisms often bolstered leaders who would later act in their own self-interest, sometimes even opposing U.S. policies once in power. This strategic misalignment not only compromised the integrity of international aid, but also had profound repercussions on the political landscape of fragile democracies. With aid dollars subtly shaping elections and swaying policy decisions, the very notion of impartial humanitarian assistance was called into question, a debate that continues to stir controversy among policymakers and citizens alike. Calls for reform and a technological overhaul. In light of the mounting evidence of corruption, mismanagement, and political interference, calls for sweeping reform of USAID have reached a fever pitch. Advocates on all sides agree that the agency's outdated systems have played a pivotal role in allowing billions of dollars to be diverted and misused. In today's digital age, where innovations such as blockchain and biometric verification can bring unparalleled transparency and accountability, the failure to modernize stands out as a glaring oversight. Proponents of change argue that integrating blockchain technology would create a decentralized, tamper-proof ledger capable of tracking every dollar allocated by USAID in real time. Such a system could expose irregularities instantly, ensuring that no funds disappear into obscure private channels. Similarly, adopting biometric identifiers for aid recipients could safeguard against fraud by ensuring that resources reach the intended beneficiaries, rather than being siphoned off by intermediaries. These technological solutions, they contend, are not mere luxuries, but essential tools in reforming a system riddled with inefficiencies. At the policy level, there are mounting calls to restructure USAID's operations entirely. Some experts propose merging the agency with the State Department to improve oversight and create a more unified approach to foreign policy and aid distribution. Others argue for a radical decentralization, channeling funds directly to local non-governmental organizations, NGOs, that have a nuanced understanding of their community's needs. By bypassing bloated international contractors, the hope is that aid can be delivered more swiftly, effectively, and with greater accountability. Critics of the current system are not merely concerned with the financial implications of mismanaged funds. They highlight that the same outdated methods which allow corruption also contribute to broader strategic failures. When billions intended for humanitarian aid are funneled into opaque channels, the long-term development of recipient nations is compromised. Infrastructure projects remain incomplete, schools and hospitals lie unfinished, and local communities suffer the consequences of misdirected resources. Moreover, this inefficient allocation further fuels public distrust in the government, both domestically and abroad. In response to these challenges, high-ranking officials and policy experts are pushing for a comprehensive audit of USAID's practices. These proposals include not only technological updates, but also organizational changes aimed at instilling a culture of transparency. The objective is clear: to realign the agency with its core mission of providing effective, life-changing assistance to those in need, while ensuring that every taxpayer dollar is accounted for. Whether through modern digital tools or structural reforms, the push for accountability represents an urgent corrective measure, one that, if successfully implemented, might restore public confidence in the nation's commitment to global humanitarian efforts. Elon Musk's explosive claims and dangerous research allegations. Adding another explosive dimension to the unfolding saga, billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk has emerged as a vociferous critic of USAID's operations. Musk's statements, delivered both via social media and high-profile interviews, have sparked a firestorm of debate regarding the true nature of many agency-funded projects. He claims that funds intended for humanitarian missions have instead been redirected into dangerous scientific research, efforts that may have inadvertently created hazardous biological threats rather than combating disease. According to Musk, certain foreign laboratories operating under USAID funding engaged in risky experiments that went well beyond conventional medical research. Instead of using funds to improve health systems or build medical infrastructure, significant amounts were allegedly poured into projects aimed at modifying pathogens, efforts which, critics argue, have the potential to produce more virulent strains of viruses. Such experiments, conducted with little oversight and using outdated safety protocols, have raised urgent questions about biosecurity and the ethics of government-funded research. Musk's allegations are particularly alarming in the context of existing evidence of mismanagement. If funds meant to support essential infrastructure and public health are instead used to experiment with dangerous biological agents, the potential consequences could be catastrophic. The implications extend far beyond financial misappropriation. They strike at the heart of national and global security. Some experts have even suggested that the misdirected funds and the resulting experimental projects may have opened up vulnerabilities that could be exploited in future biological crises. Amid this controversy, whispers of hidden facilities and secret tunnels have circulated, rumors that lend an almost cinematic quality to the unfolding scandal. The repeated mention of a clandestine tunnel beneath the USAID building, now highlighted by investigative tips and further amplified by Musk's pointed commentary, has only deepened public anxiety. Such stories fuel speculation that not only has corruption infiltrated the agency, but that covert operations may be hiding in plain sight. As calls for accountability mount, critics of USAID have seized on Musk's claims to underscore the urgent need for an independent investigation into all agency-funded research. Transparency, they argue, is non-negotiable when taxpayer money is at stake, and when the safety of millions could be jeopardized by reckless scientific experimentation. While Musk's assertions have their detractors, some insisting that such claims lack solid evidence, the public debate remains heated. In an era where even well-intentioned research can have unintended disastrous consequences, the case for rigorous oversight has never been more compelling. Domestic impact, global repercussions, and the uncertain future. As the controversies surrounding USAID unfold, the debate over foreign aid has transcended traditional policy discussions and struck at the very core of American domestic priorities. Many citizens are beginning to question why, in a time when roads, schools, hospitals, and public transportation in the United States are crumbling, billions of dollars continue to be sent overseas. The disconnect between what is promised in international aid and the desperate needs of American taxpayers has fueled a growing backlash against what is widely seen as irresponsible fiscal policy. Critics argue that the mismanagement and political manipulation associated with USAID are symptomatic of a larger systemic flaw, a prioritization of global influence over the welfare of American citizens. Studies and public opinion polls reveal that a significant portion of citizens believe that U.S. foreign aid should be scaled back, redirecting resources to address domestic challenges such as rising healthcare costs, graphically increasing college debt, deteriorating infrastructure, and unfulfilled public services. For struggling families, it is difficult to reconcile the lavish sums funneled abroad with the daily hardships faced in their own communities. Policy think tanks are questioning whether USAID, in its current form, is an asset or a liability. Proposals have emerged to hold the agency to stricter oversight, with some urging a complete merger of USAID into the State Department. Such moves are intended to eliminate inefficiencies, reduce the chances of funds being misappropriated, and align foreign aid more closely with clear national interests. Yet critics of this approach worry that too much centralization may stifle the agility needed for effective humanitarian responses. Globally, the ramifications of USAID's actions have been equally profound. When funds are diverted from genuine development projects to politically motivated agendas, the resulting instability in recipient countries has long-term effects on global security and economic growth. In parts of Africa, Eastern Europe, and the Middle East, the diversion of aid has at times exacerbated poverty and fomented political unrest rather than alleviating it.
I've been saying it for a while.
Yes, you have.
I've been saying that I think Elon Musk believes he's president. And with all the issues Americans are going to be voting on, you know where they started the interview?
Whoopi Goldberg might be in bigger trouble than you think. After pointing fingers at him for his extremely active participation in U.S. politics and constantly supporting Donald Trump, the Tesla CEO has had enough. When she least expected it, Elon Musk filed an $80 million lawsuit against Whoopi.
Musk now asking a federal court to stop the startup's transition to a for-profit entity,
taking their feud to a whole new level. Soon after receiving news of the lawsuit, Whoopi Goldberg broke down, and everyone wondered what would happen next. Now, there has finally been more news about the situation, and you won't believe what happened. To find out, join us as we reveal everything about the feud between Whoopi Goldberg and Elon Musk. Whoopi Goldberg and Elon Musk's viral controversy. The seemingly unending beef between Whoopi Goldberg and Elon Musk began during a casual chat on The View, or at least that's how it looked at first. Whoopi Goldberg made some pretty serious claims, saying that Elon Musk and Senator J.D. Vance were secretly trying to take over the government.
Whoopi Goldberg has lost it. The host of The View is now convinced that Elon Musk and J.D. Vance are secretly plotting a coup against Donald Trump.
If Donald Trump ever got kicked out of office. Just think about that for a second. Talking about taking over the government is not just a wild opinion, it's a full-on conspiracy theory. But Goldberg didn't stop there. She went further, suggesting that with how close Musk and Donald Trump are, Elon Musk behaves like he's the president, questioning what he really wants and painting him as someone with way too much power. The other hosts jumped in, adding fuel to the fire, but Musk wasn't going to just sit back and take it. Typical of him, Musk wasted no time in responding to these accusations, making it clear that he wasn't going to let them slide without a fight. The whole situation turned into a heated back and forth, with Musk defending himself against the claims made on the show. It became a big deal, with people talking about the implications of such statements and what they could mean for the public perception of both Musk and Vance. The discussion on The View sparked a lot of debates, showing how quickly a casual conversation can escalate into serious allegations and conspiracy theories, especially when it involves powerful celebrities in politics and business. Now here's where things got even more serious. Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX.
Okay, you've got your finger in so many different advanced technologies. As I said, SpaceX, Tesla, now you've got Solar City and the solar pack that people put on their houses.
Has taken a bold step by filing an $80 million legal proceeding instead of just tweeting about it. His legal team argues that the comments made by Whoopi Goldberg and her co-hosts were not only untrue, but also damaging to his reputation and business. Musk believes that their statements were not just careless, they were intentionally misleading, aiming to stir up unnecessary fear and negativity. He insists that media outlets should be responsible for the stories they promote, especially when those stories lack any factual support. In response to the legal proceeding, Whoopi seems to downplay the situation, saying her remarks were just meant to be lighthearted. She mentioned that she has been joking about Musk's ambitions, suggesting he thinks he's in a presidential race.
I do.
Well, you've been calling him vice president.
I've called him vice president. I called him president because I don't know what JD is doing.
The conversation turned to the idea that if there's a consistent push of false information, it raises concerns about the integrity of those who claim to be the good guys. Critics argue that you can't call yourself honest and progressive while spreading debunked hoaxes. Even sources like Snopes, which are known for their liberal stance, have labeled some of these claims as false. The whole situation was very messy, and it seemed like there was more back and forth going on. Musk isn't buying into the situation, and his fans feel the same way. Many of them cheered him on for standing up against false information, using hashtags like #CancelTheView and Support Elon, which stayed popular for several days. One supporter even tweeted that calling it a joke doesn't change the harm it can cause. Words really do have an impact, especially when they reach millions of people. And honestly, they have a valid point. This legal proceeding isn't just about Musk going up against The View. It's really about the growing distrust people have in mainstream media. Critics of the show believe that it often focuses more on sensational stories rather than sticking to the facts, frequently going after well-known personalities to grab the public's attention and boost their ratings. Think about it for a second. How many times have we seen these intense debates turn into wild accusations? It doesn't matter if it's about politicians, celebrities, or business leaders. The pattern is pretty clear. The way these discussions unfold can lead to a lot of misinformation and misunderstandings. This situation shows a bigger issue in how the media operates today, and it raises questions about responsibility and the effects of what gets shared with the public. The public's criticism of The View. The discussion on The View often challenges conventional ideas, and while some people might label it as extreme, it's not solely focused on socialism. The major issue is whether they genuinely supported socialism in the first place. One person tried to express their opinion but was interrupted, as they felt the comment was an attack on their family. They emphasized that their daughter's well-being is crucial, and they have friends and neighbors who share their understanding of the situation. They urged others not to overlook their worries. At 47 years old, they expressed their respect for Senator Rand Paul, noting that viewers appreciate the show because it's associated with reputable sources like ABC News. They also mentioned that they have legal safeguards if any errors occur. The shift from reliable news figures like Walter Cronkite to personalities like Joe Rogan has been very obvious, especially since Rogan has some unusual beliefs, such as the existence of dragons. Up until now, social media is still buzzing with reactions.
We went from Walter Cronkite, basically, to this guy, Joe Rogan, who believes in dragons. I checked it.
Every once in a while, supporters of Musk praise him for his efforts to combat misinformation, and hashtags like #CancelTheView and Support Elon trended for days when the legal proceeding was revealed. But there are still critics who believe that Musk's legal action could lead to serious issues, making it more difficult for media outlets to challenge influential figures. They see it as a wealthy individual trying to use his resources to quiet dissenting voices. Meanwhile, Musk's defenders argue that this situation is proof of a double standard. One Twitter user expressed it well, questioning how we can hold the media accountable for lies if we don't support Musk's actions. They argue that this isn't about shutting anyone up. It's actually about rebuilding faith in journalism. The internet's strong interest in the legal proceedings made some users remind everyone that this isn't the first time Whoopi Goldberg has been involved in this kind of situation. Over the years, Whoopi Goldberg has found herself in the middle of various controversies, often making headlines for her questionable comments. She has a history of downplaying serious historical events and making provocative statements about well-known personalities. In 2022, Whoopi Goldberg, the actress and TV host, made a controversial statement on ABC's The View, claiming that the genocide of Jews by the Nazis was not about race. Although she later apologized for her words.
Good morning to you, George. Though Goldberg has apologized, her comments sparked a firestorm.
She ended up offending more people when she tried to clarify her comments during a late-night talk show. Following this incident, Kim Godwin, the president of ABC News, sent a message to the staff on Tuesday night, announcing that Whoopi would be suspended for 2 weeks due to her inappropriate and hurtful remarks.
This morning, ABC News suspending Whoopi Goldberg in response to her inaccurate claims that the Holocaust was not related to race.
She emphasized that even though Whoopi had expressed regret, it was important for her to take some time to think about the effects of what she said. In her memo, Godwin expressed that the whole ABC News team stands united with their Jewish colleagues, friends, and communities. She mentioned that making such decisions is always tough, but necessary. Just the week before, she had mentioned that the culture at ABC News is meant to be driven, kind, inclusive, respectful, and open. But she pointed out that Whoopi's comments were not an example of those values, which is why action needed to be taken. That's not the only viral controversy Whoopi Goldberg has been involved in. Just last year, what started as a simple birthday celebration turned into a big issue when Whoopi Goldberg, a co-host on The View,
As you know, I love giving stuff away on my birthday, and these are some of the things I love right now, and they're all really great.
suggested that a bakery in New York refused to take her order because of her political views. The bakery has denied this claim, saying that they have been overwhelmed with orders from local customers who want to support them. More controversies involving Whoopi Goldberg. The whole situation started when Goldberg shared on a recent episode of The View that she wanted to order some Charlotte Russe, which are delicious sponge cakes topped with whipped cream and cherries, from a family-run bakery in New York City. She had previously shown her support for Kamala Harris, the Democratic presidential nominee, on the show, which may have added to the tension. The bakery's owner, Jill Holterman, quickly responded to Goldberg's accusations, stating that the reason she couldn't take the order was due to some issues with their equipment, not because of Goldberg's political stance. But Goldberg stood by her story, expressing in an Instagram video that it felt strange to her that the bakery couldn't handle her birthday order, but was able to take a larger order of the same dessert from someone else who didn't mention her name. If you think that controversy is absolutely shocking, wait until you hear the next one. There are some old clips of Whoopi Goldberg where she openly praised Donald Trump, referring to him as a friend, but fast forward to the present, and she has become one of his strongest critics. This shift raises the question of which version of Whoopi we should trust. In a recent discussion, she mentioned how she was involved in movies and expressed her feelings about judging others, saying she loves everyone. She pointed out that people are trying to change the public's perception of Trump, urging others not to be swayed by his words. Moments like these lead to doubts about her reliability, especially with Musk's legal proceeding bringing attention to these inconsistencies in her statements. Let's take a step back for a moment. This situation isn't only about Musk or Whoopi. It's really about the clash between free speech and being responsible for what you say. On one side, we have the freedom to speak out against public figures, but on the other side, there's an increasing call for media outlets to check their facts and not spread false information? Should shows like The View be able to make serious claims without backing them up with proof, or should they be held to the same standards as traditional news outlets? As this legal proceeding progresses, everyone is watching The View closely. Will they apologize publicly? Will Goldberg stand firm in her statements? Or could this mark the decline of one of the most talked about shows in daytime television? What's clear is that this isn't just another legal dispute. It's a crucial moment that might change how we think about the balance between media, free speech, and accountability. The outcome of this case could set new expectations for how public figures are discussed in the media and how responsible those platforms need to be for the information they share. It raises important questions about the role of entertainment shows in our society and whether they should be treated like traditional journalism when it comes to making claims about people. This situation is definitely one to keep an eye on, as it could have lasting effects on how we engage with the media and the responsibilities that come with it. That's flatly rejected this offer. Trump's insistence that a border wall be built made it practically impossible for the parties to reach any kind of bipartisan agreement. This destroyed his relationships with leaders from both parties, and it made the tensions in Washington even worse. Instead of building a physical fence along the US-Mexico border, some companies offered alternative solutions that used advanced technology. One option was an electronic or virtual wall. Companies like Quanergy and Anduril developed high-tech surveillance systems that could monitor the border without a concrete barrier. Quanergy in particular created a LiDAR-based system that uses laser sensors to detect movement.
LiDAR, light detection and ranging. LiDAR is a remote sensing method that uses laser to measure elevation like ground, forest, and buildings,
and create 3D maps of the border area. The idea was that with this technology, which will be integrated with cameras, the surrounding areas can be monitored in real time, and in so doing, unauthorized crossings can be immediately identified. Anduril, on the other hand, proposed using their Lattice platform, which combines a network of different sensors, including drones and cameras, and uses artificial intelligence to analyze the data and spot potential threats or illegal activity. Their Lattice platform was to function just like Quanergy's LiDAR-based system. As an alternative, they also suggested using autonomous drones for aerial surveillance along the border. The advantage of these electronic solutions, according to the companies, is that they could provide enhanced security without the huge financial burden of actual construction. This was an excellent alternative. Even some Texans who didn't think a concrete barrier was necessary saw these virtual wall alternatives as a smarter approach. Interestingly, that wasn't the only option Trump was presented with. Some researchers devised a plan to create an energy park along the border between the US and Mexico. The idea was to invest in things like wind power, solar energy, natural gas, and water desalination plants, which will be positioned at the border. According to these researchers, this energy park could help improve agriculture and create new jobs and economic opportunities for the area. If Trump had opted for this, it would have been a win-win for the United States, because while the plant generates revenue for the country, the security placed there to protect the facilities will also serve as border security. The public opinion polls also indicated that most Americans supported a multifaceted strategy over simply building a wall along the border. According to them, if the government works towards creating a path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants, increasing border security through technology, and expanding temporary worker programs, the majority of the problems of illegal immigration will be solved. Surprisingly, despite the viable options he was presented with, President Trump remained fixated on building a physical border wall and even went as far as declaring a national emergency to get the funding for it when Congress wouldn't fully approve his wall request. As soon as he became president, he built 455 miles of new border barriers. However, most of them were to replace the old fencing or vehicle barriers, instead of building a new wall across the entire border like he had originally proposed. Also, despite his claims that the construction would be funded by Mexico, the project was fully funded by the U.S. government.
And the construction of the border wall between Texas and Mexico can continue. Congress allocated about $1.4 billion to the project during President Donald Trump's term.
After Joe Biden became president in 2021, he quickly stopped any further construction of the border wall. Biden canceled some of the wall contracts and even returned land that had been taken from private owners to build the wall. But all these did not change Trump's stance on immigration, and this is possibly what led to the July 13th incident. The July 13th incident and past assassination attempts on Trump. On July 13th, 2024, a chilling incident occurred at a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, where former President Donald Trump was slated to become the Republican presidential nominee. The evening started with the usual energy and enthusiasm from the gathered crowd, eagerly awaiting Trump's address. As Trump was speaking on immigration issues, the peaceful atmosphere was suddenly shattered by the sound of gunfire. A 20-year-old man named Thomas Matthew Crooks, who had been acting suspiciously earlier, had managed to climb onto the roof of a nearby building which was about 300 yards from the stage, and opened fire with an AR-style rifle which he had gotten from his father. Luckily, Trump could dodge the bullet with only a slight abrasion to his right ear. Pandemonium erupted as the crowd scattered, some seeking cover while others tried desperately to flee the scene. Amid the chaos, the Secret Service sprang into action, shielding the president and rushing him to safety. Tragically, one brave attendee, Corey Comparatore, a 50-year-old former fire chief, took a bullet to protect his wife and daughter and lost his life in the process. 2 other spectators were also critically wounded. As the shooting continued, the Secret Service's highly trained counter-snipers engaged the assailant and wounded him in the process. After the incident, it was discovered that the shooter was spotted 43 times at a shooting range practicing with rifles. Later on, Trump was reported to be in stable condition from the hospital he was rushed to, but as the resilient person he is, that same day, he took to social media, vowing to his supporters that he will never surrender. Before now, Trump had been the target of several threats and assassination attempts. In 2016, during his presidential campaign, a 20-year-old British man named Michael Sanford tried to shoot Trump with a gun he grabbed from a police officer at a Trump rally in Las Vegas. Sanford was arrested and sentenced to over a year in prison. Later that year, just before the 2016 election, there was another scary incident at a Trump rally in Reno, Nevada. Someone in the crowd yelled, "Gun," which caused Trump to be quickly taken off the stage by security.
Donald Trump's remarks, the crowd sort of reacting to someone there. Somebody apparently yelled that the man had a gun. He was tackled by Secret Service agents and Donald Trump was rushed off the stage.
But it turned out the person was not armed. In 2017, a man named Gregory Linegang stole a forklift and tried to drive it toward Trump's presidential motorcade in North Dakota with the goal of flipping over Trump's car and killing him, but failed and was arrested and sentenced to 20 years in prison. There were also a couple of times in 2018 and 2020 when ricin-laced letters were sent to the White House, addressed to Trump by William Allen and Pascal Ferrier. But despite all the attempts to take him out, he always emerged unscathed. Though there are many reasons he may have been the target of many assassination attempts, but one that has responded the most is the belief that the most recent attempt were due to his stance on a sensitive issue, one that Pope Francis had firmly admonished him about severally. Sit tight because we just got to the juicy part. What Pope Francis said about Donald Trump, with the little that has been said about the Pope, it's no secret that the Pope is very outspoken, especially on matters that conflict with his moral standing. Due to his active involvement in politics, he has always given his 2 cents on issues, and one that caught his attention was Trump's stance on immigration. In one of his trips to Mexico in 2016, when asked about Trump's proposal to build a wall on the border with Mexico and deport millions of undocumented immigrants, he blatantly stated that a person who thinks only about building walls instead of bridges is not Christian, as it goes against core Christian beliefs. This wasn't the first time the Pope had weighed in on Trump's stance on immigration. Before the Pope's trip to Mexico, which included a visit to the border, Trump had taunted the Pope, calling him a very political person who was being used as a pawn by the Mexican government. In response to this, the Pope maintained his cool and instead responded by calling Trump's views on immigration un-Christian. This was a direct attack on Trump's ego. In retaliation, Trump fired back by calling the Pope's comments disgraceful and saying no religious leader should question another's faith. At another time, the Pope called Trump hypocritical for his decision to end the DACA program, which had protected young, undocumented immigrants brought to the U.S. as children from deportation. According to him, if Trump is the pro-lifer he claims to be, he'll understand that family is the cradle of life and its unity must be protected. He added that young people needed to refine their roots and that anything that robs them of hope was harmful. In the Pope's view, by pursuing policies that tear apart families, Trump was acting in a way that was completely contradictory to being truly pro-life. But that's not all. The Pope also drew a connection between Trump's stance on immigration and his views on climate change, another area where the Pope believed Trump's policies were not aligned with a pro-life ethic. In 2017, President Donald Trump decided to have the United States pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement. The Paris Agreement was an international deal adopted in 2015 by almost every country.
The United States will cease all implementation of the non-binding Paris Accord. The Paris Climate Accord is simply the latest example of Washington entering into an agreement that disadvantages the United States.
The goal was to limit global warming to less than 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, with efforts to keep it even lower at 1.5 degrees. As part of this deal, the U.S. had promised to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 26 to 28%, below what it was in 2005, by 2025. This seemed like a perfect plan until Trump, with the excuse that the agreement was taking a toll on the country's economy, especially the fossil fuel industry, decided to opt out. As someone big on climate issues, Pope Francis, who was highly displeased, openly berated Trump and said humanity will go down if the U.S. does not get back into the agreement, and that those who denied the reality of climate change and refused to take action will be judged by history for their decisions. Still, in 2017, President Trump made some new policies that threatened the U.S. relationship with Cuba. Under this new policy, he banned U.S. firms from working with Cuban groups controlled by the military and intelligence services there, which made it very difficult for American businesses to expand in Cuba, tightened restrictions on travel to Cuba for U.S. citizens, as against how it was during Obama's regime, and even told the State Department to review Cuba's designation as a state sponsor of terrorism, something the previous administration had removed. With all these decisions he was taking, it appeared as though Trump was taking the nation 10 steps backward instead of fostering the progress his predecessors had started. This was what the Pope was strongly against, especially considering that the U.S. had over time become a cynosure of hope for some countries. While Pope Francis strongly opposed some of Trump's ideologies, there are other groups of persons who believe and support Trump's leadership. These are the staunch conservatives and the American preservationists, and they make up about 30% of his base support. The staunch conservatives are steadfast fiscal conservatives who also embrace traditional moral values. They have a moderately nationalist view of American identity and are skeptical of immigration, both legal and illegal. The American preservationists, on the other hand, form the very heart of Trump's base. This group is more economically progressive, but has a strong nativist, ethnocultural view of American identity. Just like the staunch conservationists, they are strongly opposed to both illegal and legal immigration and fiercely support a ban on Muslim travel to the U.S. These preservationists feel a deep sense of racial and Christian identity and believe that to be a true American, you must be born in the U.S. or must have lived here most of your life and be Christian. They distrust the political and economic establishment, and their views on the environment and financial issues are more aligned with liberal positions than other Trump voter groups. With the direction the campaigns are taking, the least we can do is to watch as things unfold for the former president and the entire nation. Do you think the Pope was right in his judgment of Donald Trump and his political involvement? We'll be waiting to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channels. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will love it.